in order to stop Iran's nuclear program. The Islamic Republic responded to those reports today by offering to help any nation that, quote, confronts the cancer, referring to Israel. Quick look back at the history of U.S.-Iranian relations. January of 1984, the U.S. declared Iran a state sponsor of terrorism. As of 2010, the State Department still considered Iran the most active state sponsor of terrorism. The Islamic Republic has now ignored 5 UN Security Council resolutions demanding that it stop enriching nuclear fuel. John Bolton is the former U.S. ambassador to the UN and now a Fox News contributor. Ambassador Bolton, thank you for being with us on this important day. Give us your perspective on this news.
Well, I think the reaction that you're hearing from Iran, the continued threats against Israel, the terrorist threats against the United States, reflect their concern that indeed Israel is coming very close to a decision to use military force. And I think Secretary of Defense Panetta's decision to announce when he thinks Israel might conduct that attack is intended to take public something that's been underway privately, and that's Obama administration pressure against Israel from using military force. I think it's a mistake, but I think it shows just how far the Obama administration is prepared to go.
This was first reported by David Ignatius of the Washington Post, reporting Panetta's alleged remarks, or reported remarks, that that he believes there's a strong likelihood Israel will strike Iran in April, May, or June. Panetta was asked whether it was true, and he declined to comment. He didn't deny it. He declined to comment. You say, Ambassador, that this is essentially Panetta trying to get the word out publicly because we're trying to deter Israel from doing it in this manner?
The Obama administration has put unrelenting pressure on Israel for 3 years now not to use military force, and I think they're worried that they're not succeeding, as we've seen from some recent comments by senior Israeli officials, that they know just how close Iran is to nuclear weapons. They don't plan to let that happen. So having failed privately to stop the Israelis, I think the administration's going public. You know, perhaps next Defense Secretary Panetta will say what he thinks the Israeli flight path is or what their order of battle will be.
You know, he's already, well, the administration is taking some criticism for doing this today. We played a soundbite, we have it here, of Pete King, Republican on the House Homeland Security Committee, and he had this to say. I want to get your reaction.
Israel is our closest ally. We should be very reluctant to get in Israel's way. Having said that, this is not the thing that should be this type of issue that should be discussed in public. This should be behind the scenes between two close allies.
Do you agree?
No, absolutely. The Iranian nuclear weapons program is not simply a threat to Israel. It's a threat to the United States. It's a threat to friendly Arab regimes in the Middle East. It's a threat globally, given Iran's support financially and through arms supplies of international terrorism for decades. And the idea that we're prepared to let Iran have nuclear weapons, which is the sum and substance of what the Obama administration is doing, is terribly worrying. Another piece of important testimony this week was the Director of National Intelligence saying that all of the sanctions in place to date against Iran had not affected its nuclear weapons program. That means that all of this effort has had zero impact. It's no wonder Israel is getting closer to a decision whether or not to use military force.
Now, according to that same report in the Washington Post, the United States, the administration, is conducting intense discussions about what an Israeli attack would mean for the United States, how we would react, what would happen when Iran would inevitably retaliate. And the conclusion is that the administration favors staying out of the conflict unless Iran directly hits U.S. interests. Would that be a realistic option for us if what is, in essence, a war breaks out between Iran and Israel?
Well, I don't think we will be able to stay out, and I don't think it's in our interest to stay out. Look, the use of military force against the Iranian program is a decidedly unattractive option. There's no doubt about it. It's risky. It has potentially significant consequences. But the choice that we face is not between life as it is today compared to life after an Israeli military strike. It's life after that strike compared to an Iran with nuclear weapons. So if you don't like Iran as the central banker of international terrorism, prepare to conduct terrorist operations on American soil, threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, engaging in terrorist activity worldwide, imagine how much worse it gets once they get nuclear weapons.
As a practical matter, if Iran did this and I'm sorry, if Israel did this and Iran engaged in a full-scale retaliation, and there are questions about how equipped it is to do that, would the United States have any choice but to get involved in that conflict?
It would depend for the Obama administration on what Iran actually did. I think the most likely Iranian retaliation would be to unleash Hezbollah to rocket innocent Israeli civilian populations. That's one of the reasons this is such a terribly difficult decision for Israel. I don't think Iran would attack American forces in the region. And if they did, I think our response should be devastating.
Ambassador John Bolton, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.